Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another of the Candid Conversations that's presented by the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce with Action Coach Jamaica. So this is yet another in the series, and our co-host today from the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce is Third Vice President Melanie Sibrati, and our host this afternoon is the CEO of First Global Bank, Mariame McIntosh Robinson. So to start off, Mariam, tell us not so much about you, but tell us about the bank and what are some of the key things that you'd like us to know about First Global and what it has to offer to us, particularly at this time.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Hello. Just a little bit about First Global Bank. So First Global Bank is a part of the Grace Kennedy Group, which is a financial and food services conglomerate headquartered in Jamaica, but serving the world. And First Global Bank operates in Jamaica as a commercial banking entity, serving individuals, SMEs, and corporate customers with all the financial and risk management products typical of banks, right? The one thing I want to share though is that we are located across the country. We have 8 branches, but we've also expanded into mini branches which exist inside businesses in rural Jamaica, as well as we're the first bank, and I think only so far, to offer agency banking, which is within existing businesses in rural Jamaica, you can conduct banking services. So that's who we are. And we pride ourselves in being innovative, focused on our customer. We like to think of ourselves as striving to be Jamaica's most convenient bank. So we are open on Saturdays, and we're open late during the week, right, on weekdays. And we also have what's known as a video teller machine, so that when the bank is not open, so like early in the morning, you can come in from 7 a.m. and interact with someone through a video teller machine who will be sitting elsewhere serving our customers. So that's who we are in a nutshell.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So Melanie, our first question, I think you have that first question for Mariam for us from FGB.
I have 2 actually, because
Okay.
in what you were discussing here, 8 branches, mini branches, agency banking, video teller machine, that's pretty much the last mile of distribution for a banking business. And, that was all set up pre-COVID, I'm guessing, but it seems to set you up nicely for what has happened so far. I mean, a video teller machine, these are things that I guess get you closer to your customers on a daily basis. How have those investments kind of worked out for you sort of post-COVID?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Melanie. And I like the way you said it, last mile access. So what COVID-19 has shown us, apart from the fact that we have to be thoughtful about physical interactions and physical distancing, is that the society needs to be as inclusive as possible for us to have continued growth. And so what we've done at FGB is, as we've looked to expand, we've tried to figure out how do we most economically and conveniently reach the customer. And so we have the traditional branches, all of the banks do in Jamaica, so that's good. And we have ATMs, and we continue to try to ensure as a sector that Jamaica is well covered so that customers can access their cash, the main goal of the ATM. But what we've done at First Global is to go out into rural communities and implement what is known as the agency banking model. So you could think of it as you go to the barber shop, right? And the barber, right, could offer banking services such as withdrawals, deposits, check your balances, make credit card payments, and so forth. Those are the main services. We at First Global have started with our Western Union locations because our sister company, the Grace Kennedy Money Services, which works with Western Union, we have a number of outlets all across the country in communities, pretty much every community. And so we've gone into those locations and set up actually a hub, which is what we call our mini branches, as well as outsourced banking completely in other locations, which we call bank agents. And that allows us to be able to have customers I used to have to say, you shouldn't have to travel more than 30 minutes to find a bank. So I think with COVID and with the restricted movement and with this idea that we've seen the gaps in our society with respect to access and inclusion, the banks have to play its part in supporting the growth of our society. And part of that is just the inclusion piece and this build out terms of how we've done it, supports that strategy and aim.
That's fantastic. Arlene, do you want to?
No, please go ahead with your other question. I know you really wanted to get started with that one.
Oh, well, I was just, I was texting with Mariame last night, and I was sort of asking, but because it was more like a sort of COVID sort of discussion. And, I was saying, when small and medium-sized businesses have issues with COVID, and there's lots of, all sorts of credit issues you might have, or all sorts of problems that, may not even be perceived as necessarily banking problems. The first person you might pick up the phone to is maybe your brother or your parent or your cousin or someone who runs a business. But in fact, but for some people, calling your bank as the first port of call may actually be a smart solution, but also what is there at First Global in that sort of situation, and why would they be an interesting person to call first off the bat?
Great question. Yes. So our philosophy, and even before I became a banker, I was wearing this hat. I used to be an investor in companies, SMEs actually, and really working with them to help them grow. And I always said one of the best practices for SMEs, all businesses in fact, is to ensure that you maintain a strong relationship with your banker. And what does that mean? You should speak to your banker at least once a month. Literally, just call them and let them know how things are going. So that by the time you need something from the bank representative, your relationship person, can represent how things have been going, and then you submit the paperwork to substantiate the specific request at hand. I think with COVID-19, though, when you look at the sector itself and the role that banks play in addressing this type of a economic crisis that has happened, we have the health, economic, and social crisis, but the banks really play a role in the economic aspect of this crisis. The truth is that we have to ensure that we're approachable, we're accessible, and we speak in language that everyone understands why we're asking for things, how we can support. You're doing a good job as a banker when people think of you as an advisor. You're doing a great job as a banker when they think of you as a friend, right? And friends don't just give you exactly what you want. They tell you what's good for you, they suggest what's not good for you, and they explain the rationale. So what I'd love to get out of this is, the more we can do to demystify the sector, because I know my other participants in the sector, I know that they feel really strongly, just like First Global Bank, around supporting not just SMEs, but all businesses and individuals, and really being there as a partner. I would love to be able to demystify and just kind of share some thoughts about how to get through this crisis, and how to think of your bank as someone who should be there for you, not someone you're almost afraid to call and you call at the last minute. Or a last resort, I should say.
Yeah, thanks. So based on that, what are some of the calls that you have been getting? What are some of the needs that have been expressed so far? And how have you been responding as you describe it, responding in order to support your clients?
Yes. So with the onset of COVID, which would have happened in March, the two specific responses we've been getting at FGB and across the sector.
Right.
One is from businesses seeking working capital support. And I'll talk to you about how we've responded there.
Okay.
And the second is just businesses seeking payment holidays. Payment holidays would be a relief or kind of a deferral on paying principal and interest. And then another type of relief measure would be a moratorium on principal payments, right?
Okay.
Those are the two types of requests that we have been getting, and we've been responding. So we immediately put in place relief measures across all sectors. We've made it very specific by sector. We have relief measures up to 6 months in the first instance. So we're still going through that first 6 months since COVID started, even though it seemed like COVID started years ago, right? And also on the working capital side, First Global Bank offers for SMEs up to $15 million of an unsecured facility. And we access this through the partnership of the Development Bank of Jamaica. DBJ has been doing a lot of work through the various banks to support the SMEs, and FGB is a very, very active partner with DBJ. So specifically to access the working capital facility, we have that product right now, and we've been working closely with our SMEs on that.
Okay. So just quickly, you also have the SME Hub.
Yes.
as something that was recently launched. Well, let's actually pause to hear a little bit about it before we continue talking about SMEs. So let's learn a little bit more about the FGB SME Hub.
Get ready to scale your business with First Global Bank. Whether you're a small or medium-sized business, we have the right suite of banking solutions to improve efficiency and expand your operations. With low interest rates, fast approval, customized payment terms, and access to industry experts, your business is poised for growth when you join the FGB SME Hub. If you're ready to scale your business, then let's talk the FGB SME Hub. Growing your business is our business.
Nice. That's a very good video. So congratulations on the whole initiative as well. I know that's having an impact here. So over to you, Melanie. Yes.
Yeah, I had one other question when you were talking about payment holidays or any of those questions. A couple of these things have come up in my business and in conversations with bank. I don't think you should be, I'd like your perspective on this. You shouldn't be scared of asking for more because people can only say no, right?
Absolutely. Okay. And I think also when you ask for more, I think it's really important to explain why. And I think when banks are responding, it's very important for us to share the rationale, because then the dialogue can get to a point that no one would have thought of in the first instance. So absolutely, Melanie, I think they should be asking for exactly what they need, because usually customers know exactly what they need. The other thing I should say, during COVID-19, what we found is that people are not taking advantage of the situation. You know, sometimes you think that we have these relief measures for 3 months and that people are just asking for an extension to take advantage. We've actually found the opposite. There are a number of customers that have come out of the 3-month period, grateful, of course, and they've gone back to paying. They've gone back to paying principal and interest. And I think because it's so unpredictable and it's such a huge crisis that's going on across the world, people are just trying to navigate running their businesses in a very responsible manner, and we really have not found that people over ask. So if you need it, ask.
Oh, okay.
Ask front. Yeah, it's one of the things we found.
That's interesting. I'm wondering, so you've spoken about the response for the persons who need it based on that impact. There are some industries, there are some companies that have had to keep going. Some of them have had to ramp up how they're doing things. And so the impact on them was not quite the same. So are you finding that you have the needs of financing, growth, expansion for those companies that really have to respond?
Yes.
And respond immediately to market needs as well as to new opportunities?
Yes. So we have, at the bank, we actually have an enhanced monitoring team that looks at exactly that trend so that we can churn out products even quicker. And the benefit of a product is not that you can't approach a bank if it doesn't have a product, but once we have a product where we understand your business and sector well, the approval is even faster. And just to give you an example, the medical supplies industry, for example, has been taking off given COVID. We immediately put in place a receivables financing product for medical supplies. Now, FGB provides receivables financing, but our team designed a product just for medical supplies, because when you're doing loans, you have to understand the industry, the dynamics, all the trends, etc. And if you can bake that into a product, the approval is even faster. And that's an example of a new product the team put out very quickly once COVID hit.
Okay, thanks. Before your next question, so Melanie can prepare, I just want to highlight something, and I hope everybody heard that FGB is a strong partner with DBJ and all those excellent programs that they have available, and that you offer receivables financing in a structured, straightforward way, and that you're looking at how it is that you can gear things to particular industries. So that's very important for persons to hear. So I just wanted to reiterate that, make sure everybody heard that, that you offer these things.
And one thing I should say is that even before COVID, but it's becoming useful during COVID, before COVID, we actually designed specific products within the SME sector. As I mentioned, products are helpful because it forces the bank to truly understand the business. And when you can understand the business, you can structure things, you can finance more readily because you understand the risks. So we have a BPO product. Right, we recognize that BPOs need to build out space. They're light on collateral. Banks should be lending on cash flows, not assets. So we go into the sector, we understand it. We have a BPO sector, a BPO product. And again, most of the products we have, we partner with DBJ. We have an Airbnb product. We have a distribution product, a manufacturing product. We have a transportation product. Again, jute was an example of that, for example. But the one I want to talk about, which I know is a key product that the sector may not be seen as financing, is we have an agriculture product, right? And agriculture is a big component of GDP. When agriculture does well, we have good growth. When agriculture does not do well, we have suboptimal growth. Right. And we partner again with DBJ. We provide financing to our agricultural borrowers. We have the farm loan product, we have the poultry product, we have the plant product. And so to give an example for the poultry product, if you will, and we've kind of informally been known as a chicken farm bank. We finance a lot of chicken farms. Those chicken houses cost a lot. But again, the collateral are the houses. We get a guarantee with DBJ. If there's a construction period, we do a moratorium on principal during that construction period. And that's because we understand the offtake agreements. We understand what it means to have a partnership with a purchaser. And in instances, we will have the receivables assigned to the bank. So again, when you broad brush agriculture, you say, no, sir, I can't lose my shirt financing agriculture, but we've done well with agriculture. Remember, we're a part of the Grace Kennedy Group. So as a DNA, we understand how to work with SMEs. We understand the passion that goes into anyone that runs a SME, and we understand the impact SMEs has on this country. So it's really the responsibility of financiers like banks and certainly FGB to understand how we can get it to work. How do we finance SMEs and ensure that they're successful, because then the country is successful. And then as an entity like a bank like us, we are successful.
Thank you.
So that's a lot of innovative products. I mean, I haven't heard of that from a lot of banks, and it seems to take advantage. Well, not advantage. It seems to acknowledge the flow of the cash into your customer's business. And so, since your products are really quite innovative, do you have any advice to SMEs for innovation during this period of time, and how the bank would interact on things that maybe haven't been done before, maybe are new, and how you look at that? And I know risk always comes into banking. But,
yes.
How people might be able to explain better to banks the risks that they are looking at in innovating.
Yes. I would love to answer that question in two ways. The first way, want to just talk about how businesses can access capital. And the second way, I want to talk about startup funding, right? So in the first way, once COVID hit, the most important thing is for all business owners to get very comfortable and deep in the numbers. Look at the historical financial projections. How have you done up until this point? And then more importantly, what are the cash flow projections? Note your notes and your assumptions, right? But that is most important. Sometimes I have friends or people who come to me and say, yeah, man, I don't deal with the numbers. I'm a big picture thinker. I'm the relationship person. Well, let me tell you, when we're going through a crisis, all the big picture thinkers and relationship people, you're running the business, get close to the numbers. I can't emphasize that enough. So that's the first big point I would make. The second thing is, this is a great time to just go back to what I would call, it's not really the basics, but it's the one tool that I find when it talk about strategy and planning for the future. It's a practical tool, which is SWOT analysis, right? So look at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths and weaknesses, that's internal to your organization. And it's very powerful just to sit with a few persons in your team, in your organization, to just jot those down. And then the opportunities and the threats forces you to think outside of your organization. When a crisis hits, everyone goes internal and they try to fix. Think about opportunities and threats. And when you look at that map, then from there, figure out what are the strategic initiatives that need to get done over the next 12 months and the next 3 years. And just that SWOT analysis can actually be very expansionary in thinking, which usually doesn't happen when we're going through a crisis. And it can then set you up to tweak projections and to have conversations with financiers like banks in a more confident way. So I think that is really important for persons who are running businesses in what I would call a crisis that doesn't have a predictable end. So that's one. The second point I wanted to say is for those that they have an idea or it's a startup business, And I must say that what I love about persons who run the S's of SMEs or they're entrepreneurial is just the courage and the resilience and the confidence. I admire that. And the startup funding is available. So up to $5 million you can access right now. We're working to finalize the process so it's a much more streamlined process. But you can access that through FGB in partnership with DBJ. Again, right? DBJ is it's such a critical organization in our development as a country. They've done a great job pre-COVID. They're even more relevant now in COVID. But they also have vouchers for businesses for technical assistance, even writing a business plan. And so there's some people who've gone into like the mask making business. Why not access these vouchers from DBJ to further push your plan and your projections and that SWOT analysis I mentioned? And then from there, you can also access that startup funding where DBJ will guarantee it. So those would be our thoughts on how to get through COVID in the first instance.
Okay. You've mentioned your DBJ partnership a couple of times, and which is good. And this is an institution that's about economic development. And you mentioned that economic part of getting through this. The products that you have mentioned that you've developed that are sector specific, they contribute to some of the key sectors for development. So you sound to me like a bank that's helping to facilitate economic development. And I know that underpinning that, the entire financial sector does that. That seems to be a part of the design and the intent that you have. So as you're moving forward, are you looking at additional partnerships, deeper partnerships that will foster this, particularly as industries may have to shift, but we may have to design or redesign industries in particular. So how deep are you going with the DBJ or with other national partners? The minister, when he opened this, spoke a lot about agriculture and the importance of agriculture at this time. So are you looking at things that are sector specific, either deepening or transforming some of the things that you now have, or new sectors? Or are you looking at capacity building for those entrepreneurs, the big thinkers who need to start looking at the numbers? So on either side, how deep are you going?
Okay, so three things. The first is in terms of what we're doing already and we'll continue to do. So we'll continue to work with the DBJ. They launched last year the Credit Enhancement Facility. A number of players in the industry have signed on to that, and we use ours actively. So that allows us to continue to do that. So we'll continue in that vein, and we'll continue with building out SME products. And we do that based on a need that comes to us. If a need comes to us, we get very deep into the analysis. We say, why don't we just turn this into a product? So we will continue to do that. The second thing is this idea around partnerships. I think as a bank like FGB, look, we're not the biggest bank in the sector, but we take advantage of our size. I keep telling people, use our size to our advantage. And part of that is the ability to innovate, to make decisions in an agile manner, to expand, because we're smaller. We can expand in this cost-effective last mile access way that the bigger banks which would have had a broader coverage may not have been able to, right? So we are looking at partnerships now to move with fintechs, right? Fintechs, financial technology companies are addressing needs, and boy, are they innovative. They're quick. They go out and they're driven by market research, primary research. And so because the Bank of Jamaica, which I think has been doing a fantastic job supporting the sector through this crisis, and before, but certainly we felt the value of them during this crisis, they have created a process called a sandbox, which means that anyone with an innovative process, idea, product, they can partner with a deposit-taking institution, DTI, which would be our bank, and we can go into the sandbox together. And we think because of our technology roots and our innovative roots, we're going to be actively looking now to partner with companies, taking them into the sandbox to serve Jamaica, right? So that's another big part of our expansion plans. And if we have time, I can give you an example of that. And then the third thing is really around communication. And I know this sounds really simple almost, but what I found is during COVID, and COVID is, we're obviously pivoting to a new way of how we're going to operate as a globe and as a society and as an individual. Digital and remote working is on the rise. I mean, look, we're doing this on camera as opposed to in a room, and I really miss people. But I think it's going to be really important to communicate very strongly, because we don't get the non-verbals as much. We don't get to just drive by and ask questions. And so how banks communicate with their customers, we're telling people to go online, right? We say, go online, use Global Access. That's our online platform. But let me tell you why going online is so important. You have 24/7 access to your account, right? You can order managers' checks. You can manage payroll. You can send wires. All of that you can do at any time. And so the value of going online should really be explained. And another advice I have for SMEs, apart from always call your banker once a month at least, or if you're in a crisis, right, is that every SME should be online. There is no SME should be sending a bearer to the bank. Okay, like everything should be done online except for true in-person transactions that are required, because it's more efficient and it's where the world is pushing us, right? And so the communication has to step up. We as First Global, we'll be doing more vignettes, more, we're going to do an SME summit, but instead we're going to target specific industries, and do smaller capacity building sessions. Because once we're remote, once we're working remotely and we're communicating like this, our communication has to be super crisp, very clear. And when we're asking customers for things like, your ID has expired, please send me your ID. You can't just ask a customer for expired ID to update their ID. You have to say, well, look, from a compliance standpoint, and if you just permit me a minute to just go on a tangent here, actually, it comes up. So Jamaica is on the blacklist for the EU, right? Okay. And the Minister of Finance, who's also doing a great job, has committed that Jamaica will get off the blacklist by 2021. And there are many elements that get you onto and off a blacklist. And one of the things that we're doing as a sector is continuing to strengthen and make sure we have the best AML CFT policy framework. That was banking jargon, I know, but the best AML CFT policy framework. So we're playing our part in ensuring that Jamaica is seen as a highly compliant country. So what does that mean for banks? It means that when you are opening an account, we may ask for a few things. And then on a periodic basis, we need to ensure we have these things. We're a heavily regulated industry. So when I say, for example, Melanie, please provide your ID. I know who Melanie is, but on the file it's expired and I need to be compliant. Now, isn't that an easier explanation than just, yo, Melanie, please give me your ID. I need it. I'm a banker. I need your ID. So the communication has to step up in a way that makes it clear and more conversational.
Very true.
This brings up an interesting point about how you see SMEs interacting with the wider world. You're saying everyone should be virtual. You're saying, you're looking at all of these sector-specific products. How do you support SMEs or businesses for export or for interacting globally? Because, of course, we can sell, if we're sitting like this, we can sell any products. People could be watching us in Canada right now or Australia.
Yes, excellent question. So the biggest thing that SMEs want when they are looking to export or just think of their market broader than Jamaica is how to receive payments. Right, that is the biggest. I mean, there are many different things, but the biggest thing that banks can assist with is how to receive payments. Now, we do have our merchant acquiring. That's what we call, merchant services is when we enable any business to receive payments. So we have our point of sale. We have even the mobile point of sale, so you could drive around with it. But the biggest thing is e-commerce. And I was actually surprised at how nascent that offering is in the sector. So FGB, we have I must tell you, we have an e-commerce offering. It's one of the best in the market, maybe because the sector is a bit nascent there, but it's one of the best in the market, I'm told. And you don't have to have a website. So you could either have a website and we integrate into your website, or you don't have a website and we'll allow a link that when you share, people will then put their credit or debit card details and the cash goes or the funds go straight into your bank account. As the world moves more online, accepting payment in this manner is important. And again, all SMEs should have an e-commerce capability or an offering, and FGB can assist with that. So we have a number of customers in our pipeline right now. And if you're interested, please reach out to us, because we believe that is one of the biggest ways to open up your markets to customers beyond just Jamaica. And that's exactly how we should be thinking.
Okay, thanks. Now, you took it big picture in terms of global access and export in particular. You spoke about online transactions, but you also spoke about that last mile. And at some point earlier, you mentioned inclusion. So when you think about this environment, working remotely, keeping people outside of a banking hall, limiting contact, um, inclusion and fostering that kind of inclusion from an employer perspective. So now, how does that access that you are now providing last mile? You have the agents, you call it agency banking.
Yeah,
You
we
have
have the
many
agent.
banks. You have online. How is that facilitating for an employer to be able to support their team in terms of just making payments and transactions? So you're keeping them out, or what are some of the ways that you're facilitating that as well, so that for a company, it is the full thing. It's
Yeah.
pretty much all the services that you're looking at.
Right. So the platforms to facilitate that. So there are a number of products and services. The main ones, first is global access, because as an employer, you can pay your team members, you can pay your suppliers, you can receive cash, you can do wires, you can manage payroll, etc. So that's global access. But also e-commerce is important because that's your face out to customers, and it allows customers to pay you directly, etc. The FGB SME Hub should really be, it's actually quite a good repository of information. I think capacity building is one of the things that's critical within this space. So there are different ways in which we are working to support our customers. But I think that ultimately, we really need to ensure that from an access and inclusion standpoint, there's a little bit of a mix. An interesting fact in Jamaica is that you can't go all digital, not in our society if you want to be inclusive. Right. And I know we're speaking to SMEs, but SMEs have team members, and team members may live somewhere where there's a bank agent, and that's where it becomes relevant.
Yes.
And with all my corporate customers, when we launched agency banking, that's what they wanted to talk about. They were so impressed that a bank was doing that. Right. People want to first understand before they go into digital. And I get it, because I'm kind of the same way. And so you need that face-to-face interaction to just help walking persons through what to do and why to do it. So we see the mini branches and the bank agents as touch points and branches as relevant as we shift the mix of in-person to digital. We don't believe you can go cold turkey in Jamaica and most emerging markets, in fact, if you're going to stay inclusive.
Okay. Thank you so much. Melanie, what's the top thing for you so you're the third vice president for the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, and you have a mix of industries. FGB is a member, however, really an entity that can support your members. What would you say is the top thing for you in terms of, if you were to say something to the membership of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, as well as, and you are the voice of business in Jamaica, so you are helping other businesses. Based on your conversation with Mariame just now, what is it that you would want to share or just point out? So, your top thing from the conversation, what would you say that is?
So the Chamber of Commerce represents companies that have one person in them, that are single member, and then all the way to some really, really large corporations like Grace Kennedy, like First Global. But I think for small and medium-sized enterprises, for the Chamber, we want to give you as much support as we can, as much information. If there are issues that you need representation towards a government body, then that is something that obviously, the Chamber can do, and we have members' issues that come up every month. But I think for us during this time, knowing that there are partners out there that really are sort of holding the hands of their small and medium-sized businesses, I think it's really key to be able to project that to our membership and to support our members. So just as equally as I see it important for Mariame to share their products online, I also see it as important for the SMEs to be able for us to support them in getting this information as well. So if there is information, if there are other members that we can provide touch points to, I think that's super important as well.
Okay.
And get in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Mariame, you shared a lot today. Honestly, I think there is more than I had even expected to hear. So you spoke about, and it was just so interesting, the access, and very important right now in terms of the access and what that does for inclusion, but how it's relevant today in a post-COVID world. The SME Hub, we heard about that and all the things that you're doing in particular sectors. You spoke about the Sandbox initiative that you're working on, and there's an example. So you can drop that example in closing if you want to. You're offering startup financing. You're looking at working capital. So many things, just being responsive now to people. Receivable financing, exports, supporting that in terms of receiving payments. Continuing with DBJ, online banking. You have an e-commerce platform. So there are so many things. As you continue to support us, and you probably have a good sense of what are the greatest needs now, and that could be based on what's the interaction that you've been having with businesses, sectors in terms of different conversations. So you probably have a good sense of some of those needs. Based on that, in terms of what people ought to be doing, you mentioned take advantage of these things. If we give you 6 months, don't stop at 3 months. What are some top tips, key things that you would continue to share with businesses from SMEs to large? And based on that, how do they now engage you so that you can support them to achieve what it is that they want to?
Absolutely. So, first, you can reach out to First Global Bank, 1-876-322-1001. You can email us, fgbsmehub@ukco.com, or just look us up, fgbsmehub.com. But the tips in particular, I think I shared a few. The first one is I do really believe that you should have a very strong relationship with your banker, and it starts with a phone call or a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, but it starts with a phone call, and I think that's really important. It should even be before COVID, but certainly now. And feel free to call as much as you would like. That's one. Two is, I believe all SMEs should get to know the numbers. If you're at a certain level in the SME or you're running the SME, it is important, whether it's outsourced to a part-time FC or the person is in-house. It is very important to get to know the numbers and ask questions until you do understand, because it's in knowing the numbers that you'll be able to start projecting, and those cash flow projections is going to be the difference between, potentially not making money and making some money throughout this crisis as we pivot into the recovery phase. So I think that is also very important. Number three, it's important to have access to information. And we're living in a world now where things are just so accessible. I mean, we're having this COVID cast. We also have, a lot of persons have websites. There's just a lot of information out there. Yes. And I would even assign someone on your team, because sometimes when you're running the SME, it may be difficult, but have someone be the person for the month, or have someone be the person and have them just take meeting notes, not minutes. Minutes are much more detailed, but just the key takeaways. What are the key takeaways so you can share it with the team? So when you do come together as a management team, or a board, you're discussing that. I think that is the third key point. And then finally, please use those products, at least online. So of course, it will be global access. You must all be online with your bank, as well as e-commerce. Everyone should set up an e-commerce site. And I must tell you, you look at some of the supermarkets out there, for example, why can't we just go in and just order online and it just shows up, But just to do e-commerce, you have to make sure your technology is upgraded. So sometimes it's not that simple. But what FGB offers is, even if you don't have a website, you can actually come to us and we'll give you can host with us, essentially is what it is, but we give you a link. But I would say look at your infrastructure, your IT infrastructure, because some of the businesses that are customer facing in the retail space, you actually need to be able to link your payments with your inventory system. And we have found, because we're working in e-commerce now, we have found that some customers in our pipeline have had to delay a bit until they get those systems, the network upgraded enough to be able to do that. This is a little tip there. But those are the things that I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much. It's great to know that the private sector in Jamaica, or businesses, have a partner like you, and I'm going to say a partner like you, not just a financial institution that is not just providing the standard things, but responding to our particular needs, innovating, and really just being forward thinking, looking ahead, and just making sure that we have that access. And thank you to the Chamber. Every week we show up and get information across to persons, and what people are seeing is really a partnership. So you have the Chamber and the members of the Chamber, both Action Coach Jamaica as well as FGB. We spoke about other partners like the DBJ. So even our company is one of the listed BDOs for the Voucher for Technical Assistance program. So again, just being able to access the services as something that really is very important. What you shared today was extremely valuable. Mariame, to persons who would have been listening on Facebook and YouTube. And this is something we'll share so that people will continue to benefit from this really useful information. And we hope that in applying it, we'll continue to foster the growth and development of our country, which we love so much. And that's really evident in the passion and everything that you're doing. So again, thank you on behalf of Action Coach and the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for taking the time, Mariame, for sharing so much with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.